The calm before the storm. The sun was setting on the distant planet of Zixos, casting an orange glow over the massive structure of the Galactic Academy. It was a place where the best and brightest minds from across the galaxy gathered to learn, train, and prepare for the challenges of intergalactic life. The Academy had seen students from countless alien species, each one more unusual and terrifying than the last. But today, something different was about to happen. Inside the main building, the hallways buzzed with the usual chatter of students. Most of them were of various alien species, tall, thin beings with tentacles, short, wide creatures with armored skins, and others with glowing eyes and sharp teeth. But among them, there was a group that stood out: the humans. They had been part of the Academy for a while now, earning respect and fear from their fellow students. Their reputation had grown quickly, especially after their unexpected success in the survival classes. But it wasn't just their skills that set them apart. It was something else, something that no one had fully understood yet. Today was supposed to be like any other day at the Academy. The students had been preparing for a class on interspecies cooperation and conflict management, a topic that involved learning how to deal with different cultures and species. But today was not ordinary. Today, the humans had something that would make the entire class, and possibly the whole Academy, rethink everything they knew about the Deathworlders. The classroom doors opened with a soft hiss, and in walked the humans, each carrying a large, nondescript bag. The aliens in the room took notice, their eyes narrowing as the humans entered with their usual quiet confidence. It was no secret that the Deathworlders were different. The aliens had heard rumors about humans and their strange ways of surviving on their hostile, dangerous homeworld. But seeing them walk in like this, calm, unbothered, and with a strange sense of control, sent a chill down the spines of many. As the humans settled into their seats, they placed the bags carefully on the ground beside them. The alien students exchanged nervous glances, some shifting uncomfortably in their seats. What were the humans planning this time? Had they prepared something even more shocking than usual? No one knew for sure, but there was an unmistakable tension in the air. The instructor, a tall, slender creature with silver skin and elongated limbs, stepped into the room and immediately felt the change in the atmosphere. He paused, his sharp eyes scanning the room, noting the unease among the alien students. His gaze lingered on the humans, but they gave no hint of their intentions. He motioned for everyone to settle down, and the students reluctantly focused their attention on him. Today, we will discuss interspecies cooperation, the instructor said in a smooth, calming voice. I trust that each of you has prepared your projects on how different species can work together without conflict. The room was silent. The alien students, though used to oddities, couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen. Their curiosity grew as they waited. The humans, however, remained unfazed. They had been through many classes, many lessons, and this one was no different for them. Or so it seemed. It was then that the first human student, a tall young man with dark hair and an easy smile, stood up and casually reached for his bag. The other students watched with bated breath, wondering what could be inside. Could it be another weapon, a new invention, or something even more dangerous? With a deliberate, almost theatrical movement, the student opened the bag. Inside, nestled between layers of cloth, was a creature unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. It was large, about the size of a small horse, covered in thick fur that shimmered with an almost otherworldly sheen. Its eyes were bright green, glowing with an intense, almost predatory light. As it stepped out of the bag, its sharp claws clicked on the floor, sending echoes through the silent room. The moment the creature's paws touched the ground, the atmosphere in the classroom shifted. The once calm and controlled room was now filled with a palpable fear. The aliens stared, frozen in place, their eyes wide with horror. This was no ordinary creature. It was a predator, a real, living threat. And yet, it was the pet of the humans, a mere companion. The creature's movements were graceful, but there was an undeniable sense of danger. It sniffed the air, its glowing eyes scanning the room, taking in every alien face with a predatory gaze. Some of the aliens began to shift nervously in their seats, unsure whether they should flee or stay. The teacher's expression faltered as he saw the fear in the eyes of his students. "What is that?" one of the students whispered, though it was hard to tell if they were speaking to anyone in particular. The human student who had introduced the creature smiled slightly. "This," he said casually, "is just our pet. We call it Razor. It's a companion, nothing more." Nothing more. The aliens had heard stories of Earth's wildlife, of creatures that could tear through solid metal with ease. But this was something different. This was not just a wild animal. This was an apex predator, and it was sitting in their classroom, uncontrolled, unafraid, and completely at ease. The tension in the room was suffocating. The aliens sat frozen, their minds racing with questions. Was this a test, a demonstration of power, or was it just another strange human habit that they could never hope to understand? The human students remained calm, watching as their pet wandered through the room, its eyes locked on every alien in sight. They could feel the growing fear in the room, and they knew that the reputation of Earth's Deathworlders had just reached a new height. There was no turning back now. The calm before the storm was over. The unraveling. The classroom was now a cauldron of tension, and the once friendly atmosphere had been replaced with fear and confusion. Every alien species in the room knew the reputation of the Deathworlders. They had survived on a planet so dangerous that even the simplest tasks for a human were life-threatening. But this was something new. A creature like that, a creature so clearly designed for destruction, was calmly strolling around the classroom like it owned the place. The human students sat back in their chairs, their expressions neutral but confident. They were unfazed by the panic building in the room. Razor, their so-called pet, seemed to sense the fear around it. It paused for a moment, its glowing eyes narrowing as it surveyed the aliens. It gave a low growl that echoed through the silence. "Is it safe?" an alien student asked, their voice trembling. The creature's predatory stare was enough to make anyone second-guess their survival instinct. The human who had introduced Razor, the one who had seemed the most relaxed, leaned forward, looking at the alien student who had spoken. "Of course, it's safe," he said, his tone almost dismissive. "Razor's trained. He's not interested in you." His words should have been reassuring, but they didn't have the intended effect. The alien students were still on edge, their hearts pounding with fear. How could something so dangerous be controlled by these humans? The instructor, who had been standing at the front of the room, finally found his voice. He stepped forward, his long limbs tense with anxiety. This is highly unusual," he said, his voice rising slightly as he struggled to maintain control of the situation. "Are you suggesting that this creature is just a pet, a harmless pet?" He didn't wait for an answer, clearly not expecting one. He turned back to the class, trying to re-establish order. "This animal," the instructor continued, his eyes now darting nervously to Razor, "is not part of the curriculum, and it is a serious risk to the safety of all of us here. You cannot just bring something like this to class without consequences." The human student who had been so nonchalant raised his hand slightly, signaling for the teacher to calm down. "With all due respect, sir, Razor isn't a danger to us. It's just a part of our life. We use him as an example of how we've learned to survive, to coexist with creatures far more dangerous than anything you'll encounter here." There was a pause. The class shifted uncomfortably, and all eyes fell on the creature. Razor had stopped moving now, sitting like a massive dark shadow in the center of the room. The alien students, all from different parts of the galaxy, exchanged nervous glances, none of them able to comprehend the calmness with which the human spoke. It was as if they were living with a force of nature itself. A small alien with wings fluttered nervously in their seat and whispered to a nearby companion, "How can they stand it? How can they live with something like that?" Another alien, a tall figure with translucent skin, leaned in and whispered back, "I don't know, but I've heard rumors about Earth's creatures. They say some humans tame monsters, things that could rip apart entire fleets with just a swipe of their claws." The tension was thick, and there was a palpable sense that things were about to spiral out of control. Every alien in the room was now considering their escape routes, their survival instincts kicking in. Razor's eyes seemed to follow each student as it prowled through the classroom, its massive frame sending tremors through the floor with every step. The humans, however, seemed completely unfazed, their eyes locked forward, as if nothing unusual was happening. Suddenly, Razor let out a sharp growl, the sound vibrating through the room. Every student jumped, some even gasped in fear. The creature's muscles tensed, its sharp claws clicking against the metal floor. It moved with lightning speed toward one of the alien students, a smaller reptilian species, and for a moment, the room was filled with a collective intake of breath. But instead of attacking, Razor simply stopped just inches from the student. It sniffed the air, its sharp nose brushing against the alien scales, then turned its head as if deciding it wasn't interested. It walked back to its spot in the middle of the room, flopping down lazily as though nothing had happened. A sigh of relief swept through the room, though no one dared to relax entirely. The humans, however, seemed completely unbothered. They exchanged knowing glances, almost as if the entire thing had been a casual demonstration. Razor wasn't interested in the aliens. He was simply testing the waters, so to speak, gauging their reactions. "See," the human student said with a small smirk. "Razor doesn't care about them. He's just curious. That's all." The rest of the class was silent, the tension still hanging heavily in the air. The instructor, despite his obvious discomfort, tried to regain control. "I think we need to take a break," he said firmly. "The lesson for today is over. Please return to your dorms for the time being. We will resume the lesson at a later time." As the students slowly began to leave, their eyes still fixed on Razor, the humans remained seated, watching them with cool indifference. No one spoke as they filed out of the room, the weight of the encounter hanging over them. The alien students had seen a glimpse of the humans' world, a world where creatures like Razor were not just wild animals, but partners. The humans were different, terrifyingly different. The hidden power of the Deathworlders. The whispers didn't stop as the students filed out of the classroom. Alien species from across the galaxy had come to learn about other civilizations, to study the art of peaceful coexistence. They weren't prepared to see a Deathworlder calmly walk into a classroom, carrying a pet that could tear apart a starship with one swipe. No one had prepared them for this. As the door shut behind them, the humans remained in the room, sitting calmly as Razor lay at their feet, still as a statue. But something about the way the humans acted, so confident, so unshaken by the events that had just unfolded, made the alien students uneasy. It was as if they had seen something none of the others had. In the quiet aftermath, one of the human students spoke up, breaking the silence. "Don't worry," he said with a soft chuckle, glancing at the door the last of the alien students had exited through. "Razor's harmless. But, well, there are some things that the rest of the galaxy doesn't know about us." His words were subtle, but enough to stir curiosity in the rest of the group. It was true. The humans had been oddly quiet about their history, even among the other Deathworlders. Earth was an enigma. The galaxy had heard whispers about humanity's violent past, their terrifying survival instincts, and their ability to tame beasts that could reduce entire civilizations to rubble. The human student who had been speaking looked around, ensuring no one was eavesdropping. "You see, Razor isn't even the worst of it. Some of the animals we have are, well, let's just say they could flatten an entire city. But there's something special about Earth's creatures. Humans and these creatures have a bond. It's why we've survived. Because we've learned how to be ruthless when we need to, but we also know when to control that power." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "Razor," he continued, isn't just a predator. He's part of our culture, part of our survival. When you've survived on a death world for so long, you don't just learn how to fight. You learn when to fight, when to control the fury inside you. A murmur spread through the room. The others were intrigued, but also unsettled by the hint of darkness in the human student's words. What did it mean to control such power? What kind of civilization had humans built if they could tame monsters like Razor? Another human student, who had been quietly observing the interaction, leaned forward. "But don't mistake us for peaceful," he warned. "We're not. We might have learned to control ourselves, but we can still bring destruction like no other species in the galaxy. That's why we've been left alone for so long. Other civilizations know that if they provoke us, they risk something they can't even understand. Humanity isn't just a race, it's a force." There was a long pause as the rest of the students took in the gravity of his words. Even the humans, who had been calm moments before, were now speaking in a more serious tone. There was a quiet recognition between them, something unspoken, yet deeply understood. They weren't just part of a classroom. They were part of a legacy that had shaped the way the galaxy saw them. Meanwhile, Razor's tail flicked idly, almost as if in response to the human's words. Its eyes glowed with an eerie intensity, locking onto each student one by one, studying them. And as it watched, a sense of unease spread through the room. The creature wasn't just an animal. It was a reminder of the kind of world these humans had come from. In the back of the room, a student from a peaceful, non-violent species stood frozen. They had seen battles, yes, but never on Earth's scale. Never against creatures that could survive even the harshest environments the galaxy had to offer. You tamed that thing?" they asked, their voice quivering. A quiet laugh escaped one of the human students. "Not exactly," they said. "We didn't tame it. We learned to survive alongside it. But make no mistake, if we hadn't been able to control the wild parts of ourselves, things would have been very different." The class fell silent once again. Outside, the planet's sun was setting, casting an orange glow through the windows of the classroom. The warm light contrasted with the cold reality that was beginning to settle in. Razor wasn't just a pet. It was a living testament to humanity's will to survive, no matter the odds. The other students may not have understood it, but they were beginning to sense the depth of the power these humans held, and the dangers that came with it. The unseen danger. As the room grew quieter, the weight of the humans' words hung in the air like a thick fog. Razor, the creature that had so effortlessly terrified the aliens, sat motionless, almost as if it could sense the shifting atmosphere. Its glowing eyes followed every movement, every whisper, as though it were silently assessing the danger in the room. Despite its peaceful posture, the very presence of the beast was a constant reminder that the humans were not as docile as they seemed. One of the alien students, a member of a species known for its pacifist nature, shuddered at the sight of Razor. Their kind had always been taught to avoid violence at all costs, to seek harmony. The creature, with its sharp claws and powerful build, represented everything they feared. They glanced nervously at their human classmate, who had been talking about the bond between humans and their creatures. "You said that you learned to survive alongside them," the alien said, their voice trembling. "But how? What happens if something goes wrong?" The human student, who had been so confident just moments ago, now seemed to hesitate, choosing their words carefully. They leaned forward, their eyes scanning the room, making sure no one was eavesdropping. "It's not just about the creatures," they said, voice low but firm. "It's about us. Humans have something inside of us, something primal. When we're pushed too far, when we have no other choice, we can tap into that power. We can become something else." The alien student's eyes widened. "Something else?" The human student nodded slowly. "Yes, we've learned to control it, to survive. But it's still there, lurking under the surface." They glanced at Razor, then back at the others. "And if we ever lose control, The galaxy won't be ready for what happens next." The room went silent. The other students, once so eager to talk and learn, now found themselves looking over their shoulders, their thoughts racing. Was this what the galaxy feared about humanity? That they were not just peaceful explorers, but something far more dangerous, something that could destroy everything in its path if provoked. Razor's tail twitched, breaking the tension in the room. But the flick of its tail was far from reassuring. It was a reminder of the untapped power that humans had within them. The creature, despite its seemingly harmless appearance, was more than just a pet. It was a symbol of humanity's capability to survive, no matter the cost. A quiet murmur spread through the room. The alien students exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of how to process what they had just learned. They had been trained to believe that all civilizations were equal, that peaceful coexistence was the ultimate goal. But now, they were beginning to see that the humans were not like them. Another alien, one with shimmering scales and an almost serene demeanor, raised a hand. "But why? Why don't you show this power to the rest of the galaxy? If humans are as strong as you say, why hide it?" The human student gave a small, sad smile. "Because we've seen what happens when power is unleashed without thought. Our history is filled with mistakes, wars we started, and battles we couldn't control. It's why we avoid it now. We don't want to be the monster we were. We've learned that restraint is the only way forward. The galaxy isn't ready for the kind of destruction we could bring, and we've learned not to let that power consume us." The words hung in the air like a warning. Humanity's greatest strength was also its greatest burden. The ability to destroy, to wage war, was always within reach. But the humans chose not to use it. They chose restraint. And in that restraint lay a power the rest of the galaxy couldn't comprehend. But some of the aliens weren't so sure. They had seen Razor's power firsthand. They had seen what humans were capable of, even in a classroom setting. If the humans were capable of such strength, what would happen if they ever chose to break free from their self-imposed restraint? A chilling thought passed through one of the alien students' minds. What if the humans didn't want peace? What if, deep down, they were waiting for the right moment to strike? The human students could sense the change in the room, the shift in the atmosphere. The tension was palpable. Razor, still sitting at their feet, seemed to notice it too. The creature's eyes glowed brighter, its muscles tensing. It wasn't just watching its human companions. It was watching the other students, silently warning them of the power that lay just beneath the surface. In the distance, the sun outside began to set, casting long shadows across the classroom. The warm, fading light seemed to mirror the growing unease in the room. The peaceful exterior of the Deathworlders had been shattered. Razor, once a simple pet, now represented the dark truth that humanity had hidden from the galaxy for so long. The real question remained: how much longer could humanity keep its power under control? The day's lesson had ended, but the true lesson was just beginning. The rising tension. The next day, the classroom was filled with an uncomfortable silence. The events of the previous lesson hung over the students like a storm cloud, threatening to burst at any moment. The alien students who had once been curious and eager to learn now sat on edge, their eyes flicking nervously toward the humans. Every soft growl from Razor, every twitch of its tail, seemed to echo in their minds. As the class began, the teacher, a tall alien with translucent skin and eyes that glowed like stars, tried to continue as if nothing had happened, but it was clear that the atmosphere had shifted. The usual laughter and chatter that filled the air had been replaced with hushed whispers and sideways glances. The tension was almost tangible. Today's lesson. The teacher began, his voice steady but laced with a subtle unease, will focus on the history of galactic civilizations. We will discuss their rise and fall, and what has made them endure or perish. He glanced at the humans at the back of the room. They were sitting quietly, as they always did, but today there was a difference. The humans seemed different, more reserved, almost distant. Their creatures, once calm and obedient, were now on edge. It was as if they, too, understood the gravity of the situation. The teacher knew that this wasn't just another day in class. He had been a part of this academy for centuries, but he had never experienced anything like this before. He had learned to read the subtle signs of discomfort, and today, every one of those signs pointed to the same thing: fear. Humans, the teacher continued, his voice softening, are known for their adaptability. Their resilience in the face of extreme circumstances is extraordinary. But why do they choose to keep their power hidden? Why do they resist showing their true strength? The students shifted uncomfortably in their seats, the question hanging in the air like a sharp blade. The teacher's words were aimed at them, but they weren't the ones who needed to answer. It was the humans who sat silently at the back of the room, their eyes heavy with the weight of the question. One of the human students, a tall figure with short-cropped hair and a stern expression, stood up slowly. Their posture was relaxed, but their eyes spoke volumes. There was something deeper, something unspoken beneath the surface. "We don't choose to hide our strength," the human said, their voice steady but filled with an underlying tension. "We hide it because we must. The galaxy isn't ready for what humanity can do." The words struck like a hammer against the silent classroom. The alien students looked at each other, their expressions a mixture of fear and confusion. They had always been taught that the strongest species were those who dominated others, those who wielded their power without hesitation. But the humans were different. They didn't seek domination. They sought restraint. And that was what terrified them. One of the alien students, a member of a species known for their intellectual prowess, raised a trembling hand. "But why? Why hold back? If you are as strong as you claim, why not use that strength to rise above the rest? Why not show the galaxy what you can do?" The human student's gaze hardened. "Because we've seen what happens when power is unchecked," they said, their voice now low and filled with a sense of finality. "We've seen entire civilizations fall because they didn't know when to stop. We've learned from that. Humanity doesn't seek power for power's sake. We only fight when we have to. And when we do, we don't stop until everything is destroyed." The alien students exchanged uneasy glances, their fears growing with each passing word. They had heard of the human reputation in whispers, of worlds that had been shattered under their boots. But now they were beginning to understand the full extent of it. Humans weren't just survivors, they were conquerors. And the galaxy had no idea what would happen if they ever decided to unleash their full power. Razor, the creature that had started all of this, let out a low growl. The sound echoed through the room, sending a shiver down the spines of the alien students. It was almost as if Razor was confirming the human's words, adding weight to the warning. The teacher, who had remained silent up until this point, finally spoke again, his voice laced with a newfound respect and fear. Perhaps it's not about power after all. Perhaps humanity's true strength lies in their ability to control it." But the human students shook their head. "You're wrong," they said, their voice cold and unwavering. "Control isn't strength. It's the knowledge that you can destroy everything in an instant. And yet you choose not to." The teacher's eyes widened, and for a moment, there was a flicker of something deep within them, something that resembled both admiration and dread. The students around him felt it too, as though a cold wind had swept through the room, carrying with it a sense of inevitability. As the lesson continued, the classroom remained tense. The lesson on galactic history seemed almost irrelevant now, as the real history, the history of humanity's true power, began to unfold in front of the alien students. They could no longer see the humans as just another species. No, the humans had become something else in their eyes, something powerful, something terrifying. The thought of humanity's restraint was both comforting and terrifying. The humans could be peaceful, but only because they chose to be. And if that restraint ever broke, if humanity ever decided to show its true strength, there would be nothing the galaxy could do to stop them. The unspoken threat, The classroom grew colder as the final moments of the lesson approached. The alien students sat still, some with eyes wide, others frozen in disbelief. The words of the human student echoed in their minds, haunting them. They had known of humanity's reputation, but now, after hearing it firsthand, they couldn't help but wonder if they'd made a grave mistake in underestimating their new classmates. Outside the classroom, the world of the academy continued on as usual, but inside, something had shifted. The balance of power that once seemed so clear now felt uncertain. The once secure sense of superiority that the alien species held over their peers was slowly slipping away, replaced by an uncomfortable realization. Humanity was a force to be reckoned with. The human student who had spoken earlier, the one with the calm yet fierce gaze, stood at the front of the room. There was no pride in their stance, no arrogance. Instead, there was only a quiet resolve, an almost unnerving sense of control. Razor, their ferocious pet, now sat calmly beside them, its eyes gleaming with an intelligence that none of the aliens could match. It was as though the creature was silently warning them all, just as the human had. Another alien student, this one from a species known for their speed and agility, broke the silence. "But you don't want war, do you?" they asked, their voice tinged with both fear and curiosity. "You're not like the other species in the galaxy. You don't need to fight, not unless you have to, right?" The human student's eyes hardened, but there was no anger in their gaze, just the quiet weight of truth. "We don't need to fight," they said, their voice soft yet piercing. "But we will. And when we do, the entire galaxy will know what it means to face humanity." The words sent a shiver through the room. The other students, who had once seen humans as little more than a curiosity, now realized that the humans were far more than they appeared. They were survivors. They were thinkers. And above all, they were incredibly dangerous when pushed to their limits. The teacher, who had been trying to maintain control of the lesson, finally spoke, his voice trembling ever so slightly. "We must understand," he began, his tone carefully neutral, "that each species has its own way of dealing with conflict. Some choose diplomacy, some choose war, and some choose restraint. But the most dangerous species are those who understand both sides of that coin. Those who know the cost of conflict, but are still capable of unleashing it." The alien students nodded, some with a deep sense of understanding, others still processing the gravity of the situation. But the seed of fear had been planted, and it wasn't going away anytime soon. "You must remember," the human student continued, their voice quiet but resolute, "that we don't fight because we want to. We fight because we have to. And when we do, we fight to win. There are no second chances." Razor, the creature that had once seemed so unpredictable, now sat at attention, as though listening intently to the human. The tension in the room mounted as the other students began to realize that they weren't just in a class anymore. They were in the presence of a force, one that had the potential to shape the future of the galaxy itself. The teacher, now visibly shaken, turned his attention to the rest of the students. "Remember this moment," he said softly. "The humans have made it clear that they are not to be underestimated. But we must also remember that their strength is not in their power alone. It lies in their restraint, their choice to hold back. If that restraint is ever broken, there is no telling what could happen." The room fell silent. The alien students had all heard of the great wars that had scarred the galaxy. They had learned of the species that had once been powerful, but had fallen to ruin because they had let their hunger for war consume them. And now, they realized, the humans were different. They weren't just strong. They were smart enough to understand the consequences of their actions. But what would happen if the humans ever decided to break that restraint? Would they become another destructive force in the galaxy, or would they find a way to navigate the path of power without losing themselves in it? As the lesson came to a close, the students filed out of the room in stunned silence. The teacher remained behind, lost in thought, his mind racing with the implications of what had just happened. He had seen many things in his long life, but nothing had ever shaken him quite like the humans. Their power, their control, their resolve. It was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. And the worst part was, no one knew what would happen next. No one knew if humanity would choose to fight or to wait, to rise or to remain silent. But one thing was certain: whatever path they chose, the galaxy would never be the same again. The reckoning. The weeks following the incident in the classroom were a time of uneasy silence. Across the academy, the aliens whispered about the humans and their terrifying pets. The once dismissed creatures, such as Razor, now represented something far darker than anyone had anticipated. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said the humans had brought the creatures to class simply to test their limits, while others feared that the humans were preparing for something far worse. The unsettling truth was that no one really knew what to expect from the species who had just revealed a glimpse of their potential. The human student who had spoken so boldly that day, whose words had sent shivers through the room, kept to themselves for the most part. They walked the halls with their head held high, but there was an air of calculated calm around them. It was as if they were always one step ahead, as if they knew the galaxy was holding its breath, waiting for them to make a move. Meanwhile, Razor, the fearsome creature that had once been viewed with amusement, now lurked near the human student like a shadow. The alien students, who had previously laughed at the idea of humans bringing their pets to class, now regarded the creature with a mixture of fear and fascination. The human had made it clear there was no weakness in their species. They had nothing to prove, yet they were more than capable of annihilating any threat when the time came. One day, as the students filed into the class for a new lesson, the tension in the room was palpable. The teacher stood at the front, eyes darting nervously from student to student, sensing the undercurrent of anxiety that had overtaken the academy. It wasn't just the humans who were on edge. The alien species who had once looked down upon humanity were now uncertain, unsure of how to react to a species that had made it clear they were far more complex than anyone had imagined. The human student entered the room, Razor at their side. The room went silent. "Good morning," the human student said, their voice calm, but carrying an undeniable weight. "Today, we will discuss the importance of restraint, and why sometimes the greatest threat isn't a fight. It's knowing when to fight." The words hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. The aliens shifted in their seats, exchanging uneasy glances. No one dared to speak, for fear of provoking the human student or the creature beside them. "Many of you," the human student continued, "have lived your lives believing that power is measured by strength alone. But the true measure of power comes from control, restraint, knowing that you can destroy, but choosing not to." The alien students sat still, absorbing the gravity of the words. Some of them had always believed that their species' strength and technological advancements made them superior to others. But now they understood something deeper about humanity, that their restraint was what made them terrifying. They weren't unpredictable like other species. They were deliberate. They calculated their moves, knowing exactly when and how to unleash their power. A student from the Zonter species, a race known for their sharp reflexes and natural weaponry, spoke up hesitantly. "So, are you saying that if humanity wanted to, they could destroy us all?" The human student's gaze locked onto theirs. There was no malice in their eyes, only the quiet truth. "Yes, we could, but it would be a waste, and we are not a species that makes mistakes when it comes to such matters." The room remained silent, and it felt as though the galaxy itself was holding its breath. The tension had reached a boiling point. The human student's words were chilling because they weren't threats. They were simply facts. Facts that the aliens were now forced to confront. "What do you want from us?" another alien asked, their voice trembling slightly. The human student's lips curled into a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Nothing. We don't need anything from you. We are not here to conquer, nor to destroy, unless we must. But if you ever force our hand, know this: humanity doesn't lose. And we don't forget. The teacher, watching from the sidelines, was visibly shaken. They had seen many things in their time as an educator, but nothing had struck them quite like the calm certainty radiating from the human student. It wasn't arrogance. It was something much more dangerous. It was a quiet understanding of just how much power they truly held. The class ended soon after, with the aliens still in a state of shock. The humans had left them with more questions than answers, and with each passing moment, the fear of the unknown grew stronger. What would humanity do next? Would they continue to hold back, or was the time for restraint running out? The aliens no longer saw the humans as an insignificant species, no longer as the naive newcomers to the galactic stage. The humans had shown that they were not to be underestimated, and that the galaxy's greatest strength might very well be its most dangerous weapon. As the students filed out of the room, the whispers began again. This time, though, the fear in their voices was unmistakable. The humans had made it clear that their strength lay not in their actions, but in their ability to choose. And that, more than anything, was what terrified the galaxy.